In this Real Talk video, I want to talk about game updates. Not specifically any recent news of game updates, but of the choices and motivations behind the scenes when game developers release updates. In Evony, we are fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your perspective, to get very frequent updates with new events, generals, equipment, and more. The frequency of updates to the game in particular is well above normal expectations. War & Order receives far fewer updates. Since I started playing, we've received a few notices of minor bug fixes, but nothing major in terms of content or events. From what I've seen around the War & Order community, content updates are less frequent, though they deliver exciting new features when they do come. Recently, War & Order released a small content update to tweak a previously released feature system, and that's what inspired this Real Talk video. In this small update, the motivations behind game changes made by the developers of the two games that I feature on this channel became very clear. Now, I'll warn the few out there that like to put their heads in the dirt and pretend everything is fine in Evony to stop watching now. In Real Talk videos, I'm blunt. If you don't want the truth and instead want to pretend that the game is all unicorns and rainbows, this video is not for you. If you are interested in the discussion, continue on. Since many of the people watching this video are likely from the Evony side of the channel, I'm going to try to explain the update in a way that is analogous as to what we might see in Evony. In War & Order, there's a feature called the totem that is unlocked in the game at castle level 26, which would be considered roughly mid-game. Think of the totem like you would an assistant general in Evony. The totem is something like a spiritual entity that joins your troops in battle as an assistant. Its primary purpose is to buff your troop stats, but it also has a skill that it uses in battle. There are many totems you can select based on your preference, and all are available to every player. But to increase the buffs the totem provides, and to make the skill it uses more powerful, you need to use specific items to upgrade them. In Evony terms, this is similar to runestones being used to upgrade specialty, except to a much higher degree. I don't think there's a good Evony analogy for the skill component, but I think you'll get the picture anyway. Veteran players in War & Order explain that when this system was first released, it was available to everyone, but it was a bit confusing and incredibly costly for players to progress. You would actually have to sacrifice artifacts to be able to upgrade the stats. This would be like if you were required to destroy Achaemenid or Ares gear every few levels to keep progressing. It was a costly process that held great rewards. The problem was that due to the design, the rewards were largely restricted to the highest spenders that could afford to lose artifacts here and there. 2 days ago, the developers of War & Order released an update to this system. Here are some of the major takeaways from this update. The totem system, which was previously unlocked at Castle 26, would now be available at Castle 20. This means that not only will players be able to get an earlier start at upgrading their totems, but that they would also get the power boost that comes with having an assist in battle. They adjusted some of the stat bonuses to be a bit more consistent and even added a few extra to improve the overall effect. Finally, they also completely removed the requirement to sacrifice artifacts altogether. In layman's terms, this means that the lower end of spenders are much more capable of utilizing this system, and it's not nearly as restrictive as it once was. Now I think back to the Evony updates of this last year, and I realize the enormous difference between these two approaches to the direction of the games. Evony releases a lot of content. A lot. The frequency of their content is commendable. However, I am having a very difficult time to recall the last time a content update was released that was not monetary focused. I think the very last one I can recall was December of 2020, nearly 3 years ago, when they released the concept of set bonuses on equipment sets. When they did this, I can honestly say they did this out of a love for improving the game and bringing something exciting for players. I miss this about the game. Every content update now comes with restrictions that are locked behind a paywall. Civilization equipment isn't a bad thing, it's an interesting feature. However, it's an interesting feature that is restricted to select players. There's no avenue for the majority of players to obtain the gear they would need to be successful in the game. They've even removed the Tyche's wheel to further monetize an already heavily monetized feature. There are so many cool decorations in Evony, there are so many fantastic generals, there are so many wonderful, wonderful things about the game. Again, these wonderful things are all completely locked away for the majority of players. Now, I'm not suggesting that they should be given away. Evony is a business, just as War and Order is a business. They provide fun escapes away from the stresses of the real world for so many people. Unique and awesome features like civilization gear and the currency required to upgrade totems should absolutely be monetized. However, the monetization should be to limit the speed at which players obtain or upgrade the features. Civilization gear fragments should drop from bosses, or there should be a free means to obtain them through some kind of a grind. Spenders will still want the immediacy of having the item now, but the eventuality of other players obtaining them at some point keeps players playing. War and Order did this very well with the totem update. It's now very accessible to players. Totems are upgradable in a way that is reasonable for even a free-to-play player. Spenders can spend on packs that give the scrolls and items necessary for upgrading totems quickly to get an edge over the competition, but normal players can gradually obtain the same items through grinding quests in the totem building and other events. Now, why would they do this? Why would the developers of War and Order release an update that is player-centered and not completely focused on pilfering their players? Because player satisfaction keeps the game going. Players want to play the game because they can be competitive to a reasonable degree. Spenders want to play the game because they can spend to have outstanding performance, but still feel like they are playing a game with other human beings rather than inserting their dollar bills into a paper shredder. I'll say this again to be clear to the Evony developers. You have some really good things in your game. There are countless outstanding features, some very interesting concepts, beautiful artwork, and some really well-conceived systems. The primary issue that players have with your game is that everything is released in a way that clearly expresses a motivation for acquiring players' money rather than creating a quality product that players want to purchase. The way you release updates is like a basketball manufacturer that makes a good ball, but they keep changing the color, and each time they release a new color, they go to your house to puncture the ball you already have, so you need another ball. When you go looking for another ball, you find out that the new ball comes in a shiny new color, but it costs 6 times what it used to. It still bounces the same way, it still shoots the same way, but if you want to keep playing, you now need that new ball because the previous one can't bounce anymore. So you buy that ball, and then the manufacturers are back at your door the next week to repeat the process. Okay, that was a crappy analogy, but the point was made. If you're going to mimic what other developers do anyway, like the whole alliance competition, blazons, and so many other features, try to pick up on some of the great strategies that other developers use to keep player satisfaction high. Go back to the 2020 Evony development style, where the motivation and priority behind content releases was to improve player satisfaction and thereby the desire to spend.
Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting the channel. If you liked what you saw, please consider hitting the like button and checking out other videos on the Miser's Guide to Evony. I'll see you in the next video.